Now, I'm happy to say that in 23 years of freelance graphic design, I've only ever used Courier once, and that was because the client insisted. And incidentally, that brings up a very important point. Where do you draw the line between what you want and what the client wants? After all, you're the designer, right? And the client's just the client. And if they knew how to design stuff, they wouldn't have hired you, right? So clearly, you should dig in your heels and never accept their point of view. Well, maybe not. Sometimes it's better for the client to be happy than for you to get your way. The thing is, the client is paying you to do the job, their job. So you have to listen to what they have to say. You may disagree with it, and so long as you're not rude and approach the problem with some grace, you should at least be able to get a hearing for your point of view. But the bottom line is that the client is paying you to do the job. If you let it become an either-or situation, you've already lost. Under that kind of ultimatum, even if you get your way, the client is not going to recommend you to anyone else in the future, and almost certainly they're not going to hire you again. So after a while, you might find yourself in a somewhat lonely situation, and you'll feel bad because you blew it, even though you may not be able to admit it. Sometimes clients of mine have wanted to include way too much on a book cover or in a logo, especially in a logo. Everything and the kitchen sink has to be in the logo. Or they've tried to insist on a color scheme that I can't stand. Or they've wanted to include a photo that's not up to the quality of the others because it's got their car or a family member or a friend in it. There's no point getting upset about it. I try to use good reasons without sounding too arrogant. Try. And mostly I've got my way. But from time to time, the subject is just so important to the client that they can't back down. In that case, you have to remember it's not your project, so there's no need to be so attached to it. So you always have the space to back down. Sure, it's your work, but that still doesn't mean you should be attached to it. In fact, it's a very good reason why you shouldn't be attached to it. Just accept with grace and move on. After all, there's a two-way street here. You don't have to work with that client again in the future if you don't want to. You'll come across some pretty wild levels of attachment in the world of art and design. People develop the idea that whatever they decide must be better than whatever anyone else comes up with because they're artists. And what can mere mortals hope to understand about their art? Fine. There are usually plenty of doors marked exit in such situations, and I heartily recommend that you use one as soon as is convenient. If you stick around, you'll find yourself being sucked into someone else's agenda with less and less freedom of choice as time goes on. But the bottom line here is that you don't ever have total freedom. You're an advisor. As a designer, your opinion should carry some weight, and if you can make a good enough case for what you think should be done, you may well get agreement without upsetting anyone. Clients can be dumb sometimes and very stubborn, just like the rest of us. Even if you don't get your way, the most important thing is, if possible, try to be kind. And it's always possible. As the designer, you're the one with the knowledge, supposedly. The client is the one with a project that needs doing, but without the knowledge. So a designer's already in a strong position when it comes to saying how something should look. But there's no point antagonizing people over it.